Well, good morning, guys, and welcome back to another youth group at home. I don't know when you're going to be watching this, but I'm filming in the morning, and so there's a nice day outside, and it's going to be nice and warm, and be able to go out and get in it after I'm done with this. But hope you guys are having a good summer. I think most of you are probably out of school. I could be wrong. If I am, I'm sorry. I don't mean to gloat, but yeah, all college students are done, so we're just kind of hanging out. But good to be with you here today. I just kind of want to start off with this story. So just the other day, I was at this restaurant with some friends, and as you walk in, it's already a little bit weird, right? With all the COVID stuff and there's social distancing, and you're not quite sure where you're supposed to sit. And so every restaurant kind of has their own little rules that they're abiding by. And so there's like different X's, like don't sit here, or you can sit here, or you can do this and you can't do that. And so we're walking in, and the servers kind of bring us to our table, and we were a party that was bigger than 6, and so we had to sit at separate tables too, and so we're kind of like yelling across the way at them to try and like have a conversation. So we're experiencing all of this kind of social distancing at this restaurant, and in this restaurant there's a couple of TVs, right, as there is, and usually those TVs are showing sports and things, and you're watching that, but right now there's not a lot of sports on, right? And so we're watching these TVs, and on one of them comes up this professional bowling, right? So I don't know if they're just at the bottom of the barrel or if that's just the only thing that's going on, but on one of these TVs, there's professional bowling going on. And on the other half of the TVs in this restaurant, there's a soccer match going on between these two German teams. And at first, bowling was the only thing that was on, and so my friends and I were watching this, and we're just like, we're sitting here watching bowling. That's a little weird, but we're watching as these people go about their bowls. I don't know, maybe that's the wrong term, the throws, and they're like so hyped. And there's this crowd that's in this like local bowling alley, and these guys are like swinging their fists, and when they get their strikes and stuff, and there's like yelling and screaming like, I'm the best, and you know the crowd is going wild as a bowling crowd can go, and they're clapping and cheering, and it's just kind of like this hyped up thing about bowling. And on these other TVs we're watching this soccer game, right? And the two teams that are playing in this German league are FC Bayern and Frankfurt, Eintracht Frankfurt. And if you're not, if you don't keep up with German soccer leagues like normal people, FC Bayern is actually, or Bayern, I don't know how to say it. I took German for a little bit, but you know, I've lost that. Anyways, so this team, FC Bayern, is one of the best clubs in the world. Like they're world-class professional soccer players. They'll go against all kinds of other professional teams across Europe, and they just kind of like slam the German league. Like they are really good. But in this gigantic stadium in Munich, Germany, where FC Bayern plays, there isn't a single fan in the stadium. So as the camera pans across them playing soccer, you just see these empty seats. And it's this huge stadium. And I kind of turned to my friends and I asked, like, can you imagine what it would be like to play in this gigantic stadium where there's nobody watching you, and it's just like eerily silent? The only noise that's going on is just you and your teammates and the other team as you're playing this world-class game. Like this is the top level of soccer. This is as good as it gets. And there's nobody there to witness it physically. There's nobody cheering them on. There's nobody clapping. There's nobody yelling. There's no noisemakers. There's no nothing. It's just like eerily silent. And as we sat there looking at these screens every now and then, I began to realize that the bowling was actually more exciting than this world-class soccer game. See, you know, in the bowling alley, there was this crowd. There was people there. I don't know. They're not practicing social distancing. It's bowling, you know, who cares? But there's this crowd that's cheering and clapping and just going crazy for these bowlers. And we began to be more drawn towards this energy of a crowd than this world-class soccer game. And I have to admit, like, I love soccer. That's my favorite sport to play. It's my favorite sport to watch. But even I was like drawn to this bowling game because on like the soccer game, you didn't see any cheering. You didn't see, like, I watched as this wing, centered the ball through a high centered cross, and this forward is up there and it gets like this redirect header that was just like amazing into this, like the top 90 of the goal. And they just kind of like grab the ball and they're like, yeah, just another day. Like there's no panning to the crowd, cheering. There's no nothing, none of that, right? And I tell you this story because I want to ask you this question. Who's in your stadium? Sometimes in life, it's really easy to try and go it alone. In a sense, we can be like that soccer game, right? We could be doing things that are world class. We could be professionals at what we do. We could be the best. We could be the top of our game. But without a community around us, it can feel really empty. And I don't know about you, but I feel like if those athletes were kept in that environment for a long time, so they were just constantly playing without anybody cheering or watching them, they'd probably begin to wonder, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, I'm sure that they enjoy playing the game, but to a certain extent, they're entertainers. They love playing in front of a crowd. In the same way, if all we ever do is just live life for ourselves, by ourselves, I think we can lose sight of why we're doing what we're doing. I have to admit that even as I wrote this lesson, it was a little difficult to think about like how I'm going to just send this out as a video, and I don't get to really interact with you on like a human level. I don't get to see your faces as I'm talking to you. I don't get to see your reactions and answer your questions and kind of feel how everybody is going, or even ask you about your week and these different things. Like I don't get to really do that physically. I can't see you. And if I were to do this for a lot longer, I'm sure that I would reach a point where like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I living? Why am I creating these things? Why am I sending this out? Right? I know for me, oftentimes it feels like it would just sometimes be easier in life if I did things by myself. I don't have to rely on people. Like, as I was graduating high school and going into college, my motto was just like independence. I wanted to be as independent as I could. I wanted to get out of the house. I wanted to leave my parents, leave my family, and not have to rely on them for anything. I wanted to be my own person. I didn't want to need my siblings or my friends or these things. But the reality is that sometimes our independence practiced in unhealthy ways can turn into this kind of toxic isolation. And I know that word has been tossed around a lot lately, this word isolation. In our current situation, isolation is kind of needed. But I also want to emphasize that social distancing is not social isolation, right? Social distancing are these kind of rules that we abide by to like keep people safe. It's how we're loving our neighbor. But social isolation is a lot different than social distancing. Social isolation is where we find ourselves cutting ourselves off from any kind of interaction from anybody. We find ourselves in really unhealthy patterns in our lives. See, the reality is that you and I were not created to be solitary beings. God created us for relationship, to be able to interact with God on a relational level, but not only just with God, but with one another. God created us for community. And I believe it brings joy to God's heart when he sees his children playing together, laughing together, playing games together, worshiping together, interacting with each other. So today I want to read a passage for you that might seem a little bit of a strange passage, but I promise it's going to make sense in the end. So this text comes out of the book of Romans, which was originally, it still is, a letter that was written by Paul to the church in Rome. And when I use the word church, I really mean like the people who lived in Rome that were Christ followers, because the church is so much bigger than just a building. Even as we have been in this social distancing and having to go through quarantine and stuff, we have still been the church, because the church is a people. It's not just a place. So we're going to jump into reading the end of this letter, which is chapter 16, verses 1 through 16. But before I jump into this, I want to just give a bit of a public announcement, public disclaimer. This passage has a lot of names in it. And my education is in Hebrew. So I took Hebrew in college, which is the Old Testament. This is the New Testament. So this was written in Greek, and these are like Roman names. I didn't take Greek or Roman, So if there's some funny names in there that are pronounced weird, you can write some comments, give your own funny pronunciation in the comments, and have a debate on how to actually say it. But we're going to go through this, but there's my public disclaimer. And so let's jump in to Romans 16, 1 through 16. I commend to you our sister Phoebe, who is a deacon in the church in Kentria. Welcome her in the Lord as one who is worthy of honor among God's people. Help her in whatever she needs, for she has been helpful to many, and especially to me. Give my greetings to Priscilla and Aquila, my co-workers in the ministry of Christ Jesus. In fact, they once risked their lives for me. I am thankful to them, and so are all the Gentile churches. Also give my greetings to the church that meets in their home. Greet my dear friend Epaenetus. He was the first person from the province of Asia to become a follower of Christ. Give my greetings to Mary, who has worked so hard for your benefit. Greet Andronicus and Junia, my fellow Jews who were in prison with me. They are highly respected among the apostles and became followers of Christ before I did. Greet Ampliatus, my dear friend in the Lord. Greet Urbanus, our co-worker in Christ, and my dear friend Statius. Greet Apelles, a good man whom Christ approves, and give my greetings to the believers from the household of Aristobulus. Greet Herodian, my fellow Jew. Greet the Lord's people from the household of Narcissus. Give my greetings to Tryphena and Tryphosa, the Lord's workers, and to dear Persis, who has worked so hard for the Lord. Greet Rufus, whom the Lord picked out to be his very own, and also his dear mother, who has been a mother to me. Give my greetings to Asyncritus, Phlegon, Hermes, Patrobas, Hermas, and brothers and sisters who meet with them. Give my greetings to Philologus, Julia, Nereus, and his sister, and to Olympus and all the believers who meet with them. Greet each other in Christian love. All the churches of Christ send their greetings. The word of God for the people of God. All right, we made it. Made it through all those names, but thanks for bearing with me. So Paul, who writes this letter to the Romans, is this like titan of the faith, right? We hear all about Paul all the time, right? He's brought up in all kinds of sermons. He's written all of these letters. Like half the New Testament is attributed to him being the author of it, which is kind of debated between people, but we'll just stick with like 50% because that's an easy percent. But in this final address to the church in Rome, you know what he does? He answers the question that I asked at the beginning of this lesson. Who's in your stadium? See, Paul, who was originally a Pharisee and a professional when it came to the law, he was really good at looking at himself and keeping himself to the letter of the law, crossing all his T's, dotting all his I's. His faith was between him and God and the law. And one might have called it an individual sport, an individual faith, maybe. But on the road to Damascus, when Paul is met with Jesus coming and meeting him there, he is kind of forced upon this realization that faith is not an individual sport. It's not designed to be done by just alone in isolation. It's designed and it was created by God to be done in community and done in relationship with others. And so he moves from his kind of blindness, isolation, this toxic isolation that he's put himself in, into a realization of a need for community and the beauty of what people can offer to each other. In his final address, we read all about the people in his stadium who have been cheering him on and ministering with him, and people he has taught who have then continued to teach what Jesus taught. And within his stadium are all those who have impacted his life in so many ways throughout his journey, on his faith journey, right? See, Paul understood that this walk of faith was not one to be walked alone. And at the end of Romans, we really get to see all the people that were involved in his life. People who were Christians before him, people who were Christians after him, people he'd taught, people who had taught him, people who were among the apostles, people who were Jews, people who were Gentiles. All of these people make up the people in his stadium who are cheering him on. And he's in their stadium too. In this letter he writes to them, I'm sure it was an encouragement. It was him cheering on the church in Rome, the people there that were gathered. So let me ask you again, who's in your stadium? Who are the people that are cheering you on? Or have you maybe in these kind of recent weeks and months been trying to do it alone? Have you emphasized trying to be independent so much that it's turned into this kind of toxic isolation from those who love you, support you, and want to cheer you on? Maybe this week, like Paul, you can write a letter to those who are in your stadium, cheering you on, the people that you think back on in your life who led you to where you are today. Or maybe this week, you know someone who feels like they're playing in an empty stadium and they're trying to do it alone. Maybe you can take a seat in their stadium and cheer a little bit louder, because we're in this together. And when I say we're in this together, I don't just mean in this COVID thing. Yes, we're in that together, but we're in so much more together. This faith journey, we're walking it together. You and I are walking it together. And we always have been, and we always will be. And if you feel like your stadium's maybe a little bit empty, and there's no one there, and you just feel alone, know that I'm cheering you on. I'm sitting there in one of those seats, and I see you, and I want you to know that your stadium's not empty. I'm sure Pastor Scott and Pastor Sheldon would say the same things. And if you're finding yourself in just kind of a low moment, know that you can reach out, and we'd love to talk, however that might happen. But know that you're not alone in that stadium. See, we're better together, and we'll be physically together soon, I promise. I can't wait for that day. And I can't wait to actually see you all on that day. But until then, know that I'm cheering for you. And the pastoral staff over at NFC, Scott, Sheldon, and I, we're cheering for you. So I hope that you all have a great day, and enjoy the summer. But we'll see you soon. See ya.